Hey, how you doing, mate?
Good, how are you?
Not bad at all. Awesome. Just reading through your notes here.
Okay.
So good to see that you've been practicing a bit and stuff. I like that you said the mouse is back to about 80% comfortable. Obviously, you chose to do it the crazy person way,
Yep,
like
yep.
me. So, hats off to you for grinding through. Obviously, it'll keep going. It's just a
Yeah,
general progression. I think you mentioned like you get stuck pretty early on the marine split challenge, but you're not meant to get super far in those. I mean, it's just about getting more comfortable with the
yeah,
actions, right?
yep,
Um,
yep.
just doing the reps is more important than anything. It's actually insane when you think about like the mechanical skill level with those sort of levels. Like there's some people who get so good at those who are still just diamond forever kind of thing, but they really want to work on that skill because they think it's cool and they get really good at it at the marine splitting. And I'm like, whoa, holy crap, you're
Yeah,
really good at this. Whereas I've never really had the patience to sit there grinding one mechanic like that.
yeah.
I've always been the guy who's like, well, I got good at splitting drones because I had banelings in my mineral lines enough times. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. But yeah, man. So you moved the tilde key. It just felt a bit weird for you. Control tilde, having to like kind of twist your hand a little and stuff. So you said, oh, let's just use 5 instead. Remind me, was that for the queens or for the defense group? I can't quite
Um,
remember.
it was meant for the defense group.
Cool.
I didn't really like move it. I just haven't actually been using it much, to be honest. I mean, I've tried to, but it just hasn't like worked out for me as much. And I didn't get like a ton of practice with it.
No worries. I mean, that's
So
something. Look, if you're not building muscle memory for it, it's like
yeah,
definitely when you're in a custom game or something, you can just get reps on it. You can if you're practicing something else in a custom game, it's like all right, just imagine I got dropped in my main, split the army up accordingly and move them to the two different locations, and then you go,
yeah,
okay, group everything back up at my natural. Now let's imagine I'm getting dropped but I want to split my army in the opposite way. There's a giant doom drop in my main and just a single medevac going to my fourth. Okay, so main army goes to the main other, it's just
yeah,
it's just about building that muscle memory because you've gone through such a big mechanical change in the last week. Like it's hard to focus on everything at once. It's a little bit lower priority. So that's something just keep like I want you to like just put it posted on that mentally. We'll come back to it. But in terms of like today, and let's put up at the very top of your notes. I always like to go down like this, but obviously, whatever
okay.
makes sense for you for the notes, feel free to edit it later, however you want.
No,
Um,
I'm cool with this. Yeah.
sweet. It just makes it really easy to like kind of go down chronologically and see, work our way backwards when we need to.
Yep.
So goals for today. So were there any mechanical questions? You're confident to just continue working with that? Any issues that popped up mechanically?
Um, I don't remember. If anything, I wrote it down. Um,
No
everything.
worries.
Yeah,
All right. Well, we'll take a look through, and if we realize we've got anything, um, I think the only real questions you had were about ZVT and the ratio of your Hydraling Bane, right? That's
yeah, and
yeah. Oh,
ZVZ.
that expands. There's those two questions that
Yeah,
we were
there
talking
you go.
about. There we go. All right. Cool. Let's copy paste that
Yeah,
as well, so we can go. Okay, ZVZ, and then we've got. Okay, so continue working on getting used to. So 5 is now your drop defense key. And sorry, remind me, what are your queens on by default?
Queens are on three,
It's 3
and
queens,
then
5, and then 1 and 2 are like your other main army groups, right?
right. So I've still kind of stuck with like three being queens plus the defense. It kind of depends on the situation, but
One main
I,
army,
yeah,
that's all right. I mean, the thing is, there are times where that's fine,
yeah,
for sure. And at some point in the future, we know this is a thing that we can revisit. So, look, if you're focusing on it,
mhm,
and you're like, okay, for now we're keeping it simple in this way that you're used to, that's fine. Why? Because you've changed your mouse drastically, and if you're doing that, you're not really using that drop defense key at all at the moment. So we've said it's very important for us to just be brutal and honest with ourselves, right? It's like I got things I'm focusing on. There's always 1,000 things in StarCraft. And it's really nice to just go, this is for the it's like the, what do you call it? Bucket list, essentially. Yeah, that's it. It's like, you're like, I'll do that at some point. I don't know exactly when. And if you're ever at a point you're like, oh, I feel like I haven't really been focusing on improving anything, it's time to like, let's learn some shit. Always just go back to that kind of like bucket list, whether you write that down somewhere separately or whatever, or it's in the very far back of your mind. But for now, that's fine. So all we're doing, right, is main army, second army, 3 is queens plus, drop defense kind of together there. Other than that, we're still practicing just mouse, just getting used to that. And that's the biggest change then. So, let's just talk about matchups, and the goal today will be go through. So we're going to answer these ZVZ questions. Other than that, do we want to, we can answer that ZVT question about the ratio. But what do we want to focus on beyond those little questions to cover those? Is it, hey, let's really make sure we just follow through and spend all the time on ZVZ, or all the rest of the time on Zerg versus Terran? Any other bonus points that you would like to hit today?
I think these two are good for now, because I think there's a lot.
You think it'll take a while with the ZVZ? No worries. All right. We'll go from there, and we'll see if we have extra time.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a replay of like the 12 pool or anything like that? So we can take a look at what's going on at the moment, or the other one. Yep.
I don't. Unfortunately I haven't like labeled it or anything, but
no worries. If you could take a glance, that would be okay. But basically, so let's skip 12 pool for now. Let's go to the second question. So when someone's doing that, that's a gasless build essentially, right? Right. They're almost always not making ling speed, even if they've started mining gas pretty early. That's what we call a gasless build, right? Okay. The Roach wall off on 2 base. So I would say still just go all in. Still just all in. Okay. And you can usually break them unless they're super duper safe. Still just all in every game is an easy response, but we should, just depending on how many reps you're getting and how common that is in the meta and all that sort of stuff. And there'll be times where nobody does it. Nobody's walling off their natural because the maps are bad for it, or whatever the reason is. The meta's just like that, right? And then you'll have times where everyone's doing it. So I know it varies. So that's an important thing, but it is very different. So what is the key characteristic of a gasless build? If you think about it, they don't have ling speed. They can't be aggressive, right? So they can't be aggressive, and they can't secure a third base because they're relying on that wall, right? So even if they go and take a third, it's like 6 lings could cancel it, right? It's, it's the, basically they are just going to be delaying stuff and going up to roaches. Now they could do sneaky mutas or something like that. But if you think about it, right, whenever anyone does this sort of thing where it's like, wait, he doesn't really have any mobility, map control, scouting, just turtling up there on 2 base, there's always, it's kind of like playing a mech player, You see someone build a planetary on their natural, and it's like, okay, there's always 2 responses, right? It's be exceptionally greedy or go completely all in. It's like, but a wall off is really strong versus all in. A planetary and the natural is really strong versus all in. It's like, yeah, but it's also a sign this guy's like trying to make 3 port BC, right? Or this guy's trying to make 45 workers before making a single roach, right? So if you're already planning to hit a nice sharp ling bane timing, it can absolutely kill them. If they've got a spine, the wall off is done really well. They build a second layer of wall, etc. Yeah, they can defend. Even pros still die to the old ling bane bust every now and then when they're doing a gasless wall off, and it's quite interesting. You'll never see a European try it, but you'll still see a Korean try it quite regularly. So anyways, the point there is if you were going to be exceptionally greedy, and we just kind of map out that branch a little bit, say, okay, we're going to be greedy. What's your mid game for Zerg vs. Zerg? Do you play mutas or roaches?
I generally like to go mutas, kind of clear overlords and kind of just make them like stay inside their base. and then I transition into Roach, Ravager.
Okay, so you just get one round of like 7 or 8 mutas out, try and force a big reaction, pick off drones,
Something
pick off
like that.
overlords,
Yeah.
and then just big Roach Ravager. It's a very simple
Yeah.
style. I like it. It's been around since the old days because it's, yeah. Oh, you built 5 spores, you built a bunch of extra queens, and bam. Now you're trying to make hydras or infestors or hive, and hey, I've got 180 supply of Roach Ravager. Let's go. Very easy for the person on the defense with no vision who's so focused on the mutas to die to that. I mean, that's a classic move. We do that versus Protoss on Terran as well. It's very good for killing both of those. You sneak some mutas out, force a big response, and making widow mines and turrets and blah blah blah, and then bam, just a giant Roach Ravager swell on the front. They don't have any siege tanks, or they're a little out of position. They've spent all their minerals on turrets. So notice I've written there in the notes, and you're following along, right? Where I'm writing this.
Yeah.
So I've written safe lead. Roughly 8 drones is like the way we can dumb that down. What is a safe lead? In Zerg vs Zerg. Now, obviously, if your opponent's going double Evo upgrades and you're not, you're maybe dropping 1 Evo and a Roach Warren and just going Roaches or something like that. This is just theory. You aren't. You're going mutas. So you're actually going even higher in tech or even in tech with them. But if you were doing that, you could go even more hard on the worker lead, right? Because they've gone double upgrades, you've gone single. So maybe you could take it to a 12 worker advantage and still be safe, right? So, it's not just how many more workers do you have, it's other things as well. But the whole point is basically like, hey, you cancel a Bane Nest, right? Once you realize it's this Gasless wall-off. You drone super, you don't build Zerglings and Banelings at all, right? Except for maybe the 4 Zerglings you built at the start of the game, right? Because why would we build any Zerglings? Unless we're going to go super all in with them, they're achieving nothing, right? We want that Evo, Roach Warren, potential Spine Crawler, 3rd and 4th Queen to all be kind of wasted resources for them. And then we want to use that 3rd mineral line. That's our economy advantage and overwhelm them. You'll often see pros do this, where they go Roaches, and they don't even make a lair. They're like, look, I want to get such a big worker lead, and I will get a +1 range of my own, but I know that's going to be later. I know my opponent's going to have like a quicker Roach army, quicker Roach speed, quicker +1. I'm just going to have a 3rd mineral line though, and have so many more slow Roaches that if they can't break me, that extra base, man, they're like, well, I'm starting a 3rd base as my Roach attack moves out. They're just too far behind. And that's, just an interesting way, I think, of seeing the example of a pro player saying, I'm going to not even have a lair started until literally after I hold the attack. But we're just focusing everything on just survive this attack, and we've got a game-winning economic advantage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Cool. So that's the general thing. Now, for you, you're playing mutas, which is pretty high tech, right? So if we think about your standard game, I don't need any details for go completely all in, by the way, right? That's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
You're high enough level. You know exactly what to do there. So basically, if you're going mutas, right? So what is the goal here? You need to get mutas out before their push hits you, essentially, right?
Yes.
But there are times where, say they're doing a 40, maybe 45 drone, big +1 or 1/1 Roach attack. It's totally fine to lose your 3rd base, right? So totally fine to lose your 3rd base. Why? Because you got mutas out. Mutas are better than Roaches. Who cares what upgrades they've got? If you've got 10 mutas out, they got nothing that shoots up on the map. You're happy to be 2 base versus 2 base. That's always going to be better for you as the muta player. So you can even then lose your base to the Roach push and instead have Spines holding your natural, right? Spines hold natural. And there's lots of games I'm a muta boy. I'm a big muta boy as well. And I very often think I'm dead. I'm like, Jesus, this attack's faster than I thought. And I'm fighting with drones, and I'm losing 25 drones. And I still come back and win the game because, they were only on 36 drones. This was such a fast Roach timing they did. And they didn't, and they're just rallying Roaches the whole time. So then it's as I finally clean up, I'm on 20 workers. Oh, you know what? They didn't kill my 3rd hatch, actually. And they ran in, even though they killed my natural mineral line entirely, I've got 14 mutas out now because this fight's been going for so long. And they've got nothing that shoots up. So they're sitting there building spore crawlers and queens off 40 drones. And in general, if you're building spores off less than like at least 2.5 bases of minerals, you're so fucked. Because how do you ever get out to your third base? Like every drone you build is just butchering your own economy. Every spore, I mean, because every spore is one less drone. It's 75 extra minerals. You know, it's that whole thing where like if you're playing against mutas, you want to be up at least half a base of workers on your opponent because mutas are always going to find damage, number one. But even before that damage is found, you're killing like 8 of your drones to turn into spore crawlers a lot of the time. So there's a lot of self-inflicted damage when your opponent gets mutas out. So that's something that's important for us to kind of factor in. But you can imagine here, it's very important for you to go directly towards mutas. Because if they've skipped ling speed, they make lair, roach speed +1, hit a big attack. That muta timing, that's what your entire central focus of your build is, right? It's getting those mutas out and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So Nidus is a big problem, right? Nidus Queen Roach is very scary. That's a problem. So obviously scouting, right? Don't let a Nidus get up in your base. Really easy to stop that with some Zerglings. If you're going immediately for lair for mutas, you should also be making an Overseer, right? So, you know.
Yeah.
The scouting, that's like Overseer, ASAP, that sort of stuff. Yeah. Cool. So I think that kind of maps out exactly what we'd be focusing on. You know, that gives us an idea of what we're doing here. But just on the fundamental level, you know, I see far too many players just go, oh, cool, it's a gasless wall-off build. And they just like, I'll still build 20 lings for safety. I'll make Banes at home. And it's like, that is very common. And that's just, you know, hey, you got to think about what your opponent's doing, right? So there's nothing wrong with going all in against a wall-off. Obviously, it's got to be hard and fast and it's super duper committed. But if we do play the other style, then that's it right there. And we can absolutely play mutas off the back of Ling Bane aggression, by the way. Like, you know, in your other style, once you evolve it beyond just doing Ling Bane all-ins, like it does add some real strength to it. I think for now, because you've been so... Well, I mean, you just avoided Zerg versus... It's not that you were simple or lacking in your Zerg versus... You just didn't engage in it, right? That's why I'm kind of like shepherding you towards like, just all in people and do it really tight and, you know, get confident with that for now. But it's good to go over this theory. So if you do get bored of the all-inning, like whenever you just be, you know, if you're like, nah, already bored of all-inning, I'll do it. If it's Ling Bane versus Ling Bane, we're both going 3 base, but whenever it's a wall-off, you know what? I want to work this strategy. If you want to do that, let's do it, you know? So you let me know kind of whatever you want to focus on, but I'm always a big fan of like, do 2-3 weeks of just all-inning every single game is never a bad thing to practice.
Maybe I can like throw up a replay right now.
Oh, I'd love it. Yes, please.
So it just kind of shows you how bad my micro is, I guess. Well, let me see if I can find it.
Oh yeah. Did you get while you get that one up? Did you get a chance to watch any of those Ling Bane videos I linked you, by the way?
Yes, I think I saw one.
Was it like the coaching video, or was it the formula to good Ling Bane micro, or like, because it's down here in your document. Get the replay open first. We can find out in a sec. Let's get some games on the screen. Let's do that. No worries, man. So I'm in chat channel Pig and Piggy and stuff. PIGGY. I don't see a fat man. Usually it takes a little bit to update. So I think as soon as you join the channel, you should see me. Beautiful.
Okay, hold on.
No worries, man. Hey guys, thanks heaps for hanging out. Thank you. Thanks, Bud. How you doing, Math Man? Fat guy with flabs, my favorite.
Toast. Okay.
We'll be back to talking to you guys in just a minute, guys. Awesome. Good. All right. So is this you just trying to do the Ling Bane all in on 3 base, or?
Correct. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, cool. And was this from today, yesterday, last week?
Okay, sorry.
Was this from last week, today? When was this?
Oh, this was yeah, sometime this past week.
Okay. All right. So we didn't prioritize putting on gas at the start. I do prefer to, if I'm doing a Ling Bane all in, like even pull off minerals to put on gas a little bit faster. But it's
Oh,
a
okay.
very minor adjustment. It's like, it makes almost no difference. Just a small little thing. Because Ling speed kicking in at a good time, you know, having an extra Baneling, that sort of stuff can make a good diff. Doesn't matter too much. Overlord positioning, let's take a look at that. That's always a strong fundamental, and it looks like they're in pretty good positions. Only thing I'd be wary of is this Overlord here. A lot of people just have that kind of where yours is. If that's even one space, like even as it is, he technically could sneak Lings out the top side without you seeing it. See how there's like a little bit of fog
I'm
there?
sorry, which Overlord were you referring to? The first one or second?
Go to everyone's camera. So
Everyone's.
yeah, you should always be on everyone's camera.
Okay, okay.
You see where I'm signaling?
Yeah,
So notice there's fog there. So
yeah.
if he runs straight north, he can snake unlimited Zerglings out. He could just queue, move there, move there. You wouldn't see them till they hit your natural or third. So just,
Okay.
it's a very small thing. That Overlord just needs to be up a couple of spaces, and then it's very
Gotcha.
unlikely that, you know, he's going to be able to get past. Now, don't get me wrong. If someone commits to pushing their queens out a little bit, they're gonna be able to always kind of find a way to open up a path. But that in itself is a bit of a tell, and it's never going to happen as quick. It's always harder for people to get their queens out there. Okay. So your third base is on the way. The Bane Nest is on the way. You stopped nice and low on just 23 workers. So you're actually going all in even a little bit quicker, which I totally am fine with. You didn't build any... No, you built 2 Zerglings initially just for the scout. Okay, cool. So you get 2 Zerglings. You went for a scout. Nothing else. And then you started building Zerglings from just 27 supply, is it? When did we start these links? 30 supply? So it looks like 30 supply. So normally I think in the build I'll be about 33, 34. If you want to start at 30, you can absolutely start those lings a little bit earlier. Is that just because you kind of wanted to get these lings ready to get across the map and try to get forward banelings up?
I think it's because I saw his links coming out.
Ah, okay. Right, just because he had 8 Zerglings, so it kind of scared you a little. If you look at his natural, though, you shouldn't have been scared by that. Because look at his drone count on his natural, compare it to your natural. That's always what you should be thinking about, right? To compare economies. So he's got a thicker economy than you right now by 2 drones on that natural.
Okay.
Now, he doesn't have a third base, so you know, it's like, oh, okay, you know, maybe he's being aggressive or whatever, but yeah. Let's try and not look at your opponent's build, because it's kind of like staring into the fucking sewers right now. It's the worst thing I've ever seen. It's hurting me. This is such a bad build from your opponent. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. We're not going to make any intelligent reads based on that. But yeah, I mean, you saw 8 Zerglings. I can understand. You're like, well, that's not just 4 or 6, right? It looks a little scary.
Right.
But we didn't need to react to that at all. So should you always have 2 Zerglings at least ready by the time your Baneling Nest is done? Yes, but you could be starting those now when the Baneling Nest is halfway done, right? Zerglings only take like... Shit, I don't even know. I think it's like 12 seconds, 13 seconds. They don't take long. I don't actually know the timer of how long they take, but 17 seconds. So yeah. If it's even if it's a bit past halfway done, you build Zerglings, they'll still be ready to morph into Banes. So this does end up being a little bit earlier for you than normal, but it's not the end of the world in of itself, because you are, you know, if you're being aggressive, that's good. We're missing injects right now for no reason. That's not great.
Yep.
We also have an Overlord sitting there for a little bit. If we go back just slightly. So you stopped rallying your Overlords to kind of directions, whereas it would have been really nice, right, to get another Overlord up here or something like that. You know, get a little bit more vision. Because it's, you know, it's kind of cool having this Overlord down here, but yeah, if I only had that one, I might even put it here just so it provides a bit more central vision, right? Because we're a little blind right outside our base right now. But the important thing is just, obviously, your first 4 or 5 Overlords should all be trying to kind of scout. We still haven't injected, so you've missed a full inject at this point while doing Ling Bane aggression. Now, I think this is probably because you saw him doing stuff, and you just saw 2 more Zerglings than a normal player might have, 8 rather than 6, and you've kind of changed your build and been a bit like all over the shop because of it, because like we're morphing Banelings on our side of the map for some reason. And we've missed a full round of injects, which means we're going to start to bank resources in a moment here as well.
Yeah. So I saw him like run like Zerglings up that way. That's kind of why those things were being built on the third.
Try to, if you think there's something coming, just build one or two at home. But definitely, we always want to try to be the aggressor wherever possible. Like if you can look, like keeping your, if he does do a big attack, if I were you, so let's imagine we think there's a Ling Bane attack coming. You know what I would have done as you? I would have actually said, look, fighting defensive with Ling Bane is going to suck. It's not good. You want to be fighting on his side. So even if he's Ling Bane attacking you, it's really terrible if we get stuck defensively on our side of the side of the map. So what would I do? Well, first of all, I'd put both my queens on my defense key and I'd bring them down to my natural. I'd be like, do an inject, bring them to the natural. And hopefully that would actually be at this point, and it would remind you to even inject them before bringing it down. And then I would just get 2 Banelings. I would just morph 2 Banelings here, put them on my defense key, right? Steal them onto my defense key, either with the queens or however you want to do that, right? Just be like, okay, cool. And if I'm really sure he's got a ton of shit coming, I would put my queens on my ramp, my main ramp, and put the Banelings behind them. And I might even grab all my drones and run them up into my main. But everything else that I've got is launching an attack on my opponent's main and natural. It's just running. Oh, he's running around the map. I'm going to run straight through the middle of the map because I want to fight on his side of the map. And that's always going to be more optimal. Because the thing is, and this is how these situations go, is if you've got a couple queens on your ramp, that's so hard for him to get in and do damage, right? Banelings, so hard for him to do damage. Whereas if you're the one who's, all your Zerglings on the defense, they don't really do anything. So if he was launching a Ling Bane attack, your Zerglings are just basically money targets. They're all going to clump up. You'd much rather have most of your units backstabbing and counterattacking your opponent. So because we don't set this attack up, check it out. It's time. Our attack should be hitting right now, right? These Banes should have been morphing on his side of the map. We should be hitting 4 minutes at the absolute latest kind of thing. Okay. But check how much time you're giving him. Not only was your opponent ridiculously safe, by the way, this guy, he's just done his first lava injects of this game, this madman. This guy's build is so fucking horrendous, it's insane. I don't know what your opponent's doing.
He's not the greatest player, but
I'm so confused. What's he doing? It looks like he's all inning, but he has less army than you. He's just not lava injecting. So I think he's seen something from you that's freaked him out. You've seen something from him that's freaked him out. This is 2 guys dancing with their own shadows a little bit, right? You're both kind of reacting to things that aren't there, and reminds us to come back to the game plan. So now look how far behind our Banelings are. So our Zerglings can't even do anything. They should just be backing off here. And we should just be rallying non-stop Ling Bane. Now, notice you've already lost a couple Zerglings, not the end of the world, but it would be really great if at some point in this huge period of time, we'd done some injects just now. Even though you've got injects going, look how much energy you've got on your queens, and you're about to enter the real micro situation now. When your Lings were running in, that was you distracting yourself, right? The first time you ran in, you're like, maybe there's just no defense, we can get damage. That's fine, but as soon as you saw Banelings, I would have liked you to click those Zerglings way back, inject, build more Zergling Baneling. Because you built more Ling Bane there, but you didn't inject, right? So you kind of gave yourself the illusion of macro without really following through on it. So that means your attack's going to stall out a minute from now, maybe less, because you don't have as much lava, right? So we're going to go in now. Ooh, that was nasty. So we kind of split like 6 Lings onto a Baneling. Not very nice. Your Banelings have been commanded in, but for some reason, they're still on your main army group as well. So what's going on? Oh, no, it's separate Banelings. Oh, okay, so you've morphed new Banelings, but you haven't stolen them onto group number 2 yet. So if you look at your group number 1 right now, has all these Banelings. All those guys are in your Zergling key right now.
Yep.
And I have a feeling you're not going to fix that up. Now, your Banelings are clicked in the mineral line, which is great. Once you see there's not many drones there, you actually should probably be changing your target to the main mineral line, because there's so little to actually kill on this expansion, because this guy's economy is so low.
Okay.
And it's like, yeah, you could get 2 good Baneling hits in there. And hey, looks like you did go towards the ramp there. But you did click towards Ling Bane. You got a few good hits there. Imagine if we had more Zerglings, though. We hadn't thrown them away. And if we were surrounding those queens at the same time as that. Obviously, it's a little dangerous, but it's one of those things where you come in and it's like, there's 1 more Baneling. But imagine if we had like 20 more Lings there. damn, maybe if we had more banelings morphing. But this is where the attack kind of stalls out. Plus, we've already hit so late, we've given him time for an extra 4 or 5 banelings on the defense, an extra queen or two, gave him time to get those queens to the front and organized. So we've given our opponent, every chance to get ready for this, and we don't have another layer of the attack coming in behind it. And that's going to make things really tough. You also start droning here. Once you're committed, just keep going. Just keep going. Just keep going. Keep rallying Banes, Zerglings, control grouping them, microing them, and going for it. And your opponent's going to make mistakes just like that. Already 2 great Baneling hits here. You got 1 queen. You got another great hit. Like, this is fantastic, right? You have no business doing damage right now. But this is what happens even in pro games. It's like the 3rd wave in the midst of the chaos from the previous wave, which didn't really do any direct damage. It just distracted them. And then it's like, oh shit, the guy forgot to remake Banelings. And, or his only 1 or 2 Banelings accidentally detonate on a few Zerglings. And then you just get in there and kill stuff. You said you wanted to show this to me because your micro is so bad. I did not see any terrible micro. There was 1 or 2 moments where you ran Zerglings into the Banelings unnecessarily.
Right.
Everything else you did was pretty fucking legit, man. Dude, this was really good. This was honestly really good though. Overall, this is you've got most of the pieces there. There was not micro lacking because the systems you were using was good. You were stealing the Banelings, you were clicking them in the mineral line. The only thing that was lacking is you freaked out because you saw 2 extra Zerglings and then you changed your build, morph Banes at home, and delayed your whole attack a long time. So overall, this is a B+, B-, I don't know, something like that. Micro is great. I don't care about we made 6 Zerglings blow up on a Baneling. If you blow up 3 Zerglings on a Baneling, that's an equal trade. 2 Zerglings, that's an awesome trade for you. 6, okay, it's like a 1 to 2 trade, not the greatest. There are actually times where it's the right call to blow up 6 Zerglings on a Baneling. You got 50 Zerglings, there's 1 Baneling standing in your way. Shit, you click 10 Zerglings on that Baneling. You just want to take it off the field so your Zerglings can get in there before they make more, right? I mean, this overall, you're doing good, man. You kept the stream going. Like, once you lost that first attack, you were injecting. This was actually really well done.
Cool.
Yeah, super impressed, dude. Super impressed. So, What's the important thing? Stick to the build. If we are, maybe something's happening, make 1 or 2 safety Banelings at home, but then continue to try and attack. And don't be afraid of losing your 3rd base. It's getting queens onto your ramp and some Banelings at home that can, if they don't do that and you do it, you're going to kill all their workers and they're still trying to kill your queens on your ramp, which are just sitting there transfusing each other if you're lucky. Banelings gives you plenty of time to morph Banelings on the high ground.
Great.
Easy peasy.
Cool.
This was great, dude. So let's go back as well. If we see a few Zerglings early, don't freak out. Focus on the drones. So let's talk about that scout real quick because we've got to talk about understanding that scouting, right? You make a false read, freak out over it. We need to make sure that doesn't happen again. So look at what you see here. What are we training our brain to look for? The drone count in future.
Okay.
And if you're ever unsure what timing it is, maybe you're not sure what timing you're scouting, you've lost your game sense or whatever. Ideally, you intuitively know this timing, this is a normal drone count. This guy's building lots of drones. So look at his main. Now, obviously, your opponent has pulled workers from the main to the natural. So it's
tricky.
It should be tricky. Your opponent's just bad in this case. But, basically, imagine he was actually hitting injects, actually started Ling speed before the Baneling nest, and was doing this to make it look like a normal build, and then hit a fast Ling Bane timing. You might be like, but Pig, just looking at the drones then, that means I'm falling for his trick. And I go, you know what I would say to that? Good. If someone's doing something that tricky, I'm okay for you to fall for it. And you know what? Even if you fell for it, when you see the Lings flooding out, guess what? He's done a hatch first. Even if he started his Ling speed on time, it would finish at the same time as your Ling speed. So would he have more Lings than you? Yes. Would you have plenty of time to make Banelings at home? Yes. As long as you react when you see those Zerglings flood out. Is it going to take a bit of speed, bit of reactions? Yes. But your opponent's done a crazy trick, even wasted mining time to sell the story, gone completely all in, and you can still just pull queens onto your ramp and make Banelings both on the low ground and high ground, swap into full unit production, and you're going to be fine. And you might be like, but you could kill my natural while I'm on my ramp. So what? You've got a 3rd base. Well, you could kill both. Not really. You can have 1,000 Banelings up by then and Zerglings. You should be able to save at least one of them. And even if he kills both, You know, he's on 20 drones. Normally, you'd be on 25 or 26 with this attack. You started building Zerglings earlier than normal in this game. So I think we want to say that just program yourself. Just look at the drones. Oh, if he has similar drones to me, it's a pretty normal build, right? In this case, oh, okay. Pretty normal stuff. Yeah. Awesome, mate. All right. What was our other Zerg versus Zerg question?
The 12 pool.
12 pool. Ooh, yeah. Can you find a replay of that?
I couldn't find. I was trying to dig through because they're not like super common, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
they're common enough, but I just I have like 100 games.
No worries, man. Yep. So I've written all that details on the Gasless build. That's fine. Whether or not you find it is okay. I mean, I can potentially look through my own replays and see if I find one, but I don't recall playing against 12 pool actually too much in the last week. So we could just do a bit of theory as well. So
okay. Yeah, I'm just not sure. Like, because I should like maybe get in the habit of like renaming the replays or something. But
yeah, well,
it's just too hard to find. Yeah.
Whenever something frustrates you, you don't need to do it all the time. I've had people I coach in the past, and then they're like, here's my spreadsheet of every game I've played with this meaningless little description in this cell of the spreadsheet, and this little cell that tells me the game length, and this cell has my macro quotient spending scale or whatever the fuck it says on replay stats. And I'm like, dude, none of this means anything to me. Like, and it shouldn't mean anything to you. I'm like, what I want is like, you lose to a 12 pool, you go, shit, I don't know how to defend against this. Like, that should be the thing that makes you go, oh, okay, let's label that, right? Like, it's anytime you're not sure what to do, you're confused, you're angry, something feels ridiculously unfair. These are all like the things that make us, hey, let's focus on that thing, man. Like, let's go look at that in more detail, right? So 12 pool.
This one might be it because it's a short game.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. So
yeah,
it looks like it's going to be It's like, was this 13-12? I think. Let's see. Should be one drone starting. No, it's a 12-11. Oh, people have been doing this lately. I don't actually. I still think 13-12 is better than this. But I guess the advantage of this is if you're planning to do the queenless version, then it makes sense. So this is going to be like the hardest hittingest version. Anyway, we can watch this from your opponent's camera.
Yeah.
But let's focus on the document for now while we write some notes, okay? So first of all, 12 pool, okay? So 12 pool. Basically that's fully gasless, right? So scouting. Okay. How do we deal with this? Well, scouting. Okay. So this is something every ZVZ, and I think you do this. Let me I can actually check. Your Overlord should be queued to see their natural and then go back a bit. And you do that. Yeah, you do that every game. So you'll be able to see if there's a hatchery down or not. So if there's a hatchery down, Overlord should see that. Overlord queued, and obviously this changes a bit based on map distance when you see it, but it's still very important. Queued to natural and back to safety. Now, obviously, if they don't have an expansion, you can kind of hang around there and be like, okay, I mean, it's clearly just at one baseling Bane, but I'll hang around to see if at some point there's a hatchery that goes down, right? So basically, expansion. So off a 12 pool, what time does that expansion go down? Off the top of your head, when do you think?
I have no idea, to be honest.
I don't know either. I think it's probably about the same time as a pool first. People in chat can tell me. I'm going to say a minute, maybe slightly faster even than a pool first. I'm going to say a minute 15. Okay. The pool would finish about, because it's, actually I can check from this, because I know where it is relationally to when my pool, to when my Zerglings are building. So you'd build 6 Zerglings, because in this case you wouldn't have the gas, right? And that pool would be slightly faster. So you'd be building your 6lings, and it's usually you start 7 and 8, and the hatch goes down right about now. So yeah, about a minute 15, maybe a minute 20, something like that. Let's say a minute 15, a minute 20. And I don't memorize as many timings in Legacy as I used to. I just kind of look at things a lot more relationally these days, which is probably just me being a lazy random player these days, but whatevs. 1 minute to 15 to 20 natural starts, okay? Now, technically, so that's 10, 12. They could technically build 14 Zerglings, but it's just those Zerglings, right? If they're doing the hatchery, okay? What is one thing they could do behind that? They technically can do this and have a gas still, but it's like a gas that goes down around the same time as the hatch. This is a super all-in that only works because people assume, you know, you wouldn't do something so inefficient. I always joke about this because like Lambo was shitting on this build a few years ago at Katowice and how it's such a silly gamble, and then he used it to beat his teammate at the time, a laser, and eliminate him from the tournament. And we were like, dude, you were just shitting on this build in your last interview. He's like, yeah, sometimes the build that's, you know, not good is good because people think it's, you know, you're not going to do it. And I'm like, yep, that is absolutely true, Mr. Lambo. You shithead. So you can imagine with that, if they've gone 12 pool like that, and they've dropped a gas around a minute 15, a minute 20 when the hatchery's down, that's probably going to be like a, I don't know, 345 Ling Flood. That's something is what that would culminate in. That's very rare. We're normally just going to assume that's not going to happen, right? Because on the base, it's just 12 pool, 10 to 14 Lings, make expand. And then the alternative is this sort of build, right? It's the one base Ling Bane. So 13-12, and obviously it could be a 12-11 like this guy or whatever. So what's kind of funny is back when people did 13-12, you could actually if you're super pro, you could see the difference in the timing of the first Zerglings. Because you're like, oh yeah, they built one drone and a gas before the spawning pool. These Zerglings are like 5 seconds later. But this is a 12-11, so I think these show up at almost identical timing as well to the 12 pool. Plus, that was already something where you'd play someone who was 2 seconds, 3 seconds late on their build. You're like, oh, he's doing it 13-12. And you're like, no, he was AFK for 2 seconds at the start of the game or something. Like it's too narrow of a line for us to rely on that scouting info, right? So I much prefer us to just play a standardized response, right? So the real hard thing with 13-12 is we're not going to see it until that, right? So no natural until much later. Like this guy ends up building a natural, but it's like, what is this, 2:30? 3 minutes? When does this go down? And even does it before a queen comes out. Interesting. I guess it makes sense. I mean, it's going to be so delayed. So, yeah. Are these the first Banelings? Oh, this guy was a little slow with this. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, your opponent fucked this up really bad. So what's awesome is even when you watch pros do this, they fuck up both the defense and the offense of it because it's so detail-oriented. This should have been the easiest hold of your life. So what's really cool is I'm going through super technical stuff right now, and I just want to take a moment to go, move your queens to your ramp, man. That literally solves this game, is like, why didn't those queens get on this ramp? That being said, he shouldn't have given you the chance to do that, okay? Right? So, just general things, though. Move your queens to your ramp is obviously if you can get them solid on there, and don't bother injecting in this scenario. If you can get a transfuse, that's worth more. I mean, if you think your queens are never going to get together, maybe you're like, screw it, a bit more lava, why not? What are other things for crisis management? Let's imagine for whatever reason we're not paying attention, we're not scouting, so we could have, as soon as our queens popped out, just get them to safety. So you've got two lovely little gaps here in your mineral line. Do you see where I'm signaling? Go to everyone's camera.
So. I think so.
See, you can't see signals yet. But there's two gaps in your minerals, right? So that's always the easiest option. Whenever a queen pops out, get her over to the minerals. Check out your main base. You've messed up your spawning pool positioning. Why? Because if that spawning pool was one space to the right, you'd have a lovely little choke point, which you could put her between the pool and the hatchery. Now, obviously, she could still get attacked from both sides, but she could create a semi-wall there. And I always like to put my spawning pool in Zerg vs. Zerg on kind of the front side of my mineral line if possible, so that it's kind of like if the Lingbane comes in from the top, they're like, oh, I can't move in this right side of the mineral line. They kind of have to go around the hatchery to get to your drones. And if they do that, it gives you a chance to, like, you'll see people, always pros, grab all those drones and then stack them up. The Banelings are coming in the mineral line and they just run through the queen down towards the natural. And if the Banelings haven't been pre-split to catch that, sometimes all the drones get out of there. And you don't lose any drones defending this. But it just creates an obstacle, creates a safe point for the queen. If it's just Zerglings in your mineral line, even if it's a later run by, your drones can always defend. The Zerglings run around the mineral line and try to get her anyway, because there's more surface area on the inside. Well, then they've got 20 drones fighting them on one side, queens on the other, and they're all surrounded. And a 15 Ling run by just dies, doesn't kill anything. And you're like, oh, fuck yeah. So pool placed as semi-wall in main base. Move queens to gaps. Now, how do you do that? Right click for the move. Shift plus hold position, which I think is, you're using standard hotkeys, right? So H for you? Yeah. So shift H, like same thing with the ramp. If I'm like, oh, sweet, I can see those lings with my Overlord. They're still out there. I got time. Grab the queen from the natural. Right-click Shift H on one side of the ramp. Grab the queen from the main. Right-click Shift H on the other side of the ramp. Now, obviously, I'll try to go make sure, because there's a good chance I didn't click that quite right and they're not quite solid, right? But sometimes they will actually, especially if you're accurate, they will get there solid. So that shift hold position always is like a nice thing. But if they're just popping out in the mineral line, I'm just like, oh, grab her from the natural, right click in between the gap and the minerals, shift hold position. Grab this queen in the main, put her in between the minerals, shift hold position. So these are all like just general crisis management things that are kind of the fundamentals of allowing you to be so much more durable as a Zerg versus Zerg player. So much more durable. Like you can survive so many more situations. But let's go back to it and let's imagine. So if we want to go advanced, there's two ways we can do this. Advanced responses, different for 12 pool versus 13-12 versus like Lingbane, right? Right? So it's pull drones and build lings and try to defend the natural, right? Just with micro. You're like, you'd fight with the drones, pull back, fight with the drones. You're just trying to save hit points in the hatchery. And then once you get enough lings out, you fight together. I'm sure you've seen people do that against the 12 pool standard version, right?
Right.
And obviously that's really bad if they're about to run in with banelings, right? Having all your drones and lings on the natural. But then when you spot the hatchery is when you swap gears. And that's when you pull back to the main, drop spines, bane nest, give up natural, essentially. Just try to defend your workers and stay alive, right? Now that's very advanced because you're having a swap. You're having a look at your hatchery in the middle of the micro and adjust your game plan. So that's an advanced reaction. So that's the problem with that. So we can look in this replay. What is the moment on Romanticide, one of the bigger maps? So it's the harder ones. Let's imagine he's not in your main, because that kind of already tells you that he's going banelings. So that's a nice gift of him doing that. Because it's like, hey, dude, you should be trying to kill that hatchery. Not everyone will do it. People do nonsense things. But you're not going to see it until 210, 212. And you might not notice straight away. So it might be 215.
Wait, what are we looking at?
You're seeing no expansion from the opponent, because that's what tells you. Remember, that's our one scouting tell. It's that. Gotcha. So the problem is, are you going to do that while microing drones versus Zerglings? That's why there's the advanced response, right? So a simple response, and we might prefer this, and I sometimes do this. Gasless response. What's nice about that is we simplify it. So we immediately pull off gas once we see early lings. So what do? We pull off gas. We start a spine on the edge of creep in the main base. So let's go back to when our spawning pool finishes. Let's take a look at this. Okay. So let's imagine we're doing this dumb response. We don't even care about anything other than this piece of scouting here. Overlord see lings coming. We know they're early pool. We don't care what type. We're doing general response, okay? So first things first, pull off gas. So you can pull these two guys off gas. This other one that's you're just going to get a tiny bit more minerals of mining. Not a lot, just by having them stack on, these patches. You get a tiny bit more minerals, but just about simplifying things. We're going to grab a drone. We're going to move that over to the edge of creep. See where I'm signaling? So we want to start a spine there so we can kind of move down to the natural as quickly as possible and or potentially cover our ramp, right? So that if, say, it is Lingbane, well, we can run our queens over to the ramp and it's going to kind of cover them while they're running over there a little bit. It's going to kill anything running to our main, blah, blah, blah. If they run straight into our base like this, we're going to need to pull drones to defend that potentially, right? So you can potentially, we have an optional second spine in main mineral line that we just do as standard. Just like, I just build both straight away. Now, the problem if we do that is that we're not going to have enough money to both build both queens and as many zerglings as we can. So that's why that's nice for consistency, but it's a little inefficient, especially if they're going 12 pool. We really don't need that. We just need, queens and zerglings and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So what's more important here is instead queens and lings as pool finishes, pull drones to, buy time on natural because we're still fighting to defend our natural, right? And that's it. It's basically just the idea is like, okay, cool. Our drones are going to be fighting. We're building queens. We're building zerglings. And then the thing is, how do we adjust it? Well, verse Banes, obviously it's more about pull drones back, right? To the main. If you lose natural, doesn't matter. Because the idea is you got 18, 19 workers, 20 workers, however many it is. This guy's on 11, 12 workers. So if we lose the natural, it's not the end of the world. Try to secure ramp. Bonus points if we save natural hatchery, right? So if we're like, oh, our queens are solid on the ramp, then we manage to walk our spine down there, and he tries to break the ramp a bit too much rather than going for the hatchery. Maybe we even save that hatchery on Reddit points, and that's the dream, right? But the important thing is just secure the ramp. Get a creep tumor, move our spines over, and then we can always just walk the spines down to the low ground and rebuild the hatchery with queen spine there, right? Extra spine. If we don't already have two. If we don't already have the second, right? But basically the idea there is with this response is because it's a bit more one size fits all, a bit simpler. We're not relying on us like spotting, oh, there's no hatchery and instantly pulling our drones back and then dropping spines and trying to recover. Because if you think about it, banelings can be hitting us at about 235, 240. Banelings can be walking into your base, right? About 240, 245. Ling speed's done, all this sort of stuff. This guy's kind of late. If you don't spot till 215, spine crawler takes what, 29 seconds, I think? Something like that. It takes a long time. You're basically going to have to instantly spot no expansion and build spines. So this is why I tend towards saying just do the simple response. Pull off gas, do the mineral response, because you're already building one or two spines just by default every game, and you're always pulling your drones. And then, yes, you can pull your drones back, but, you've already got the spines up as a bit of insurance. This is a little less efficient if they're just doing the 12 pool version, because we wouldn't want to cancel the spines and stuff, right? If we see hatchery, right? So that's a different response there. Or not a different response, but a different branch. So we can be on this track. Ideally, if we see they've got a hatchery down nice and early, and they've just done the 10 zerglings, it's real minimal, cancel your spines because you just don't need them. Right?
Yeah.
And go back to droning, right? Oh, I've already got my 8 or 10 lings, my 2 queens out. I've pushed it back. I've kept both bases alive. Cancel those spines. Maybe one of them already finished. Whatever. Move it to the natural. Not the most efficient, but this is just a generally safer response. So I think it gives us a little bit of redundancy. So that's a whole lot of theory. Questions? What's floating around in our head right now?
So my problem is not knowing when, like, because you said to go back to droning, right? If you see like them drop the hatchery, but I'm just not sure if like, they're droning or building lings. Yeah. And if they build lings, I'm always just scared to drone if they build lings. So
that's a very different scenario to like the replay we're looking at, right?
Right. Because, it is.
Yeah. Right. So just making sure we are not thinking about this game in front of us as we think about this, right? This is that theoretical game. So like I said, that's a super all in if they are doing that. But that is why we do have some little pieces of scouting, right? So in terms of follow-up scouting, that's how we do it. We do well against that, okay? So what are a few things? First is try to get 2 lings across the map ASAP, right? Now, obviously, if they've opened with a gas, you might be like, I can't do that. I don't have ling speed. They do. Well, in that scenario, remember their hatchery is like 3 minutes later than yours, and you have 2 or 3 spine crawlers by default. You don't give a fuck if they keep building ling bane. You got like 3 queens, 3 spines. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, we don't care. It's more we think they're going gasless, so we're being mega greedy. And it was a fake expand. So what do we need to see? All we need to see is no drones on their expansion, right? Try to get 2 lings across the map ASAP. So what are we looking for? Drone count on natural. And what's the other thing? Is pool making ling speed, right? That's the other thing, right? If we can get in the main. And beyond it, what you could do, right, in a game like this. By the way, I actually would have pulled my second Overlord back. I didn't mention this. I would have sat that out front my base as soon as I saw those early Zerglings. That's something we should probably write.
That's good to know.
Pull second Overlord back. Overlord back to sit out front of natural. The other thing you can do with scouting, though, is your Overlord could always just poke in. So if you're, like, really worried, you could literally sacrifice your Overlord at the front of the base, just fly it through their natural. Be like, yeah, this is going to die, but it's going to see stuff. Or if we already, if we've got another Overlord that's shuffled up, we could always send this Overlord in from behind the natural and just peek in on the minerals. Or we could peek in from over the right-hand side. You see where I'm signaling? And you could just watch the ramp. You watch that ramp for 30 seconds. You don't see any drones coming down. Whoa. Usually you'll see Zerglings or drones. It'll give you an idea of what they're building. So I would say if you just get 2 Zerglings across the map right away after the 12 pool, though, that should give you a bit of warning. Because the thing is, even if they're flooding lings, queens on the ramp, build a spine behind those queens. Like, even if you see it, those lings building up at his base, which you often can with that all in if you scout, you'll be like, oh, okay. And even that extra 10, 15 seconds, you're going to get spines up. You have time to drop your own Bane Nest if you really want to, like, or whatever it is that you're going to use to defend. But yeah, you'd be amazed at how well you can fight against those Ling Floods if you just get in the right position. Most dying to Ling Floods and all-ins and surprising attacks is fighting in bad positions in Zerg vs. Zerg. If you get your queens on your ramp, it creates such a nice area. It often buys you time to get out your Banes. It often buys you time to get out your Spines. Let's imagine you just, this natural. If you see a giant Ling Flood coming right now, you've actually got a really nice Spine Crawler positioning just tucked underneath those minerals up against the ledge, where if they're going to need to micro their Zerglings behind the mineral line to the right to actually get surface area. Otherwise, they've only got a couple lings. So you could build a spine on the low ground. You could build another spine on the high ground. 2 queens hold positioned on top of the ramp. And yeah, it's like, but what if they kill my natural? Well, you're on 34 drones and he's on 12 still. So you literally can lose your hatchery because you ran all your drones to your main, wait for your spines to finish or your Bane Nest to finish, retake it and your third base at the same time. And your opponent's like, well, I'm backed up to 24 drones now. And you're like, oh, cool. By the time my 2 bases finish, I'm like, I still have more workers than you. So it's just about remembering that we can be flexible. We can take a punch as a player. We want to appreciate how desperately bad and all in that attack is and how they need to completely kill you. It's kind of like this attack here that he's doing. He doesn't have a queen. He's producing 1 larva every 11 seconds, I think it is, or 12 seconds out of the hatchery. Nothing else is going for him, 11 drones. If you just put your queens on your ramp, that's why I'm saying, like, if you just got your queens on your ramp, you win this game. Because those queens alone would kill most of his army, and his reinforce is like the saddest trickle, man. It's like if you've ever seen an old dude at the urinal and he's just peeing in these little dribs and drabs and bursts, and I'm like, oh God, kidney stone sucks, man. I don't want to get old. That's essentially what the rally is with this version, where they don't even get a queen out. They don't even have injects happening. It's just such a slow trickle of Ling Bane. So if they lose even 6, 7 Zerglings, they don't even have enough Zerglings to beat your slow lings anymore. Like, it's just this awkward, awful sort of thing. So I think as long as we appreciate that and we go, okay, there's a lot of, if I just react when I see the thing move out and I react well, as long as you do those fundamentals and focus on that, we don't need to obsess too much about what if they're doing this or that. Because just building the muscle memory of queens on the ramp, bam, shift hold position, and then responding in that quote unquote bad situation, you realize that it's actually a totally fine situation. And one of the best ways to get comfortable in ZVZ is just to learn how to be comfortable in that and go, oh, okay. And as long as you start training yourself to just keep doing the right tasks, like, you can actually get so much better in these scenarios. Yeah, Wings of Liberty was kind of a good training zone for me. Did you play Wings?
Yeah, I did.
Did you play Zerg back then?
Yes.
Do you remember the 1 base Sling Bane War? That's like all anyone did for a while.
No, I don't remember that.
So it was like the earlier days. Like people at some point learned how to take expansions, and like it was partially the maps. Like the very early days of Wings of Liberty was just terrible, dude. It was like the maps were so tiny. It was just everyone went 14 gas, 14 pool. If you ever got an expansion up, it was very rare. You weren't really droning it. It was just there to build a few more circles and banelings. But it was good because every game resulted in just banelings and mineral lines, and you were just getting used to like, hey, yes, this is bad, but if I spread my drones out and I only lose 4, and then I keep doing my things rather than losing 12 drones, I often can still win from there, right? And it was just like, oh, and if I get these queens on this ramp, this is like a game changer. And if I could just get good at always getting those queens in the gap in the minerals, these situations where I used to feel my heart sink and go, I'm dead, I'm dead, I'm dead, I fucked up, I fucked up, I fucked up. I suddenly learned how to be like, oh, this is actually totally fine. So for me, that's a big game changer, is just learning to be comfortable in those scenarios. Something that makes you really, I think, understand these things on a deep level is like, so if you ever play against Zealot run bys as well, Zealots, Zergling styles, if you're ever doing like a mass Zergling style, any of these styles, they always rely on you getting surface area. Where if you do a lot of Zergling all-ins, people who do like +1 meleeing all-ins know this better than anyone. They're like, if I get the surface area, it just kills people instantly. They just die. But if their units get wedged in a gap, if their queens get on a ramp, if their stalkers and adepts get in the mineral line between a nexus and a shield battery, my units do literally fucking nothing. And that's kind of the melee unit conundrum, right? They're always the highest damage, most efficient units when they can land their hits. But the moment you deny them that, they don't have a lot of play. They're just kind of like, shit. And especially if people don't micro them really well, it's insane. Like the number of, like you'll regularly see me when these builds come around in the popular with 2 queens on top of my ramp, 4 drones on hold position, hugging those queens in front of them, and the enemy Zerglings are just going, let me hit the queens, and then they'll eventually, after 4 or 5 seconds, be like, oh shit, I got to focus these drones down because these drones are lower attack priority, and by this time, and then they've got banelings going down my ramp, and I'm laughing at them with triple their work account, and I'm like, yeah, okay, we're fine, you know. But these little tricks, I think, allow us to be, you know, imperfect, but Overlord scouting, you're always going to see the attack coming. That'll give you a bit of time. We can try to get better things with like, all right, let's try and get Zerglings in and check things and that sort of stuff. But once we build those fundamentals up with like just queens to the mineral, like queens to the ramp, bam, pull the Zerglings back, make the banelings on the high ground. You know, too many times I see people see a ling flood coming out, and it's like, okay, by the time they react, the lings are maybe here or here, and they just like morph their banelings here out front. They're natural, and they just like get killed before they finish morphing. And I'm like, no, run back up your ramp and morph on the high ground, you know? Or a mass of lings comes in and we sit out front and we let our 10 lings fight 20 lings in the open, which results in them all getting surrounded, and then they die in like 2 seconds. And we kill maybe 1 enemy Zergling. Whereas if we pulled back to our, even the mineral line where it's a bit more choked up, we'd be fighting more of a 10 versus 10 Zergling fight. Their other Zerglings would be stuck behind each other, right? Same thing with the main ramp. This is why the main ramp is such a magical area. Have you ever done any Ravager Ling attacks against Terran?
Not really. I don't really go roaches in CVT.
You don't like easy wins, I see. Okay. No, it's...
I can't say I've never done it, but it's like that's not as usual for me.
For sure. I mean, it's one of those ones where it's so funny because if the Terran is on their natural, you can just win the game instantly. You're just like, haha, lol. And then you have games where they pull up their ramp with a few seconds to spare, raise the wall. And it's like, they don't have a lot of units. It's 2 Marines, 4 Hellions, and a Reaper. But your Lings just can't get on the ramp. They just die to the splash. You know, your Roaches are all taking splash. Like, there's times even just doing a Roach pressure, and every Roach is getting hit by every Hellion splash. It's just that ramp, you know, the area, like when you get choked up, whenever you're using shorter ranged or melee units, and you're forced into a space where you can't get surface area, it really gives you this appreciation for, like, the massive difference based on the engagement. And that's in a way what all defending Zergling Baneling is about, right? It's don't if they're surprising you with more units than you have, it's finding these mechanisms to buy ourselves a few extra moments just to be a little bit more chilled, a few more moments, buy a little bit of time, and it's a massive game changer. So I think there's this thing where rather than, because you can't hold it too tight and be like, I gotta win every game, oh, I'm gonna be frustrated. It's more about going, okay, I lost that game. It was a bit chaotic, but it's Zerg versus Zerg. It's a knife fight, right? Let's try and get better at that knife fight. Okay. Just check these details. Did I do all my little micro maneuvers? Did I get my queens to my ramp? Did I rally my Zerglings back and fight in a choke point? So often like these Zerglings here on the natural, right? So in this scenario, you're control grouping your Zerglings, which is great, but you haven't. Okay, no, not this one. It's the next one. It's a little bit later. Here we go. So your Zerglings there kind of got concaved on a little bit, by the way. This was not the worst fight because your drones came in, but notice that you kind of like let your Zerglings be exposed and surrounded a little by his Zerglings. Yeah. It was okay because you had your queen popping and you had enough numbers that I don't mind it. But it's just one of those things to be wary of, right? You know, fighting in the open. And there, like, we didn't pull our Zerglings back. Half our Lings just get aggroed out and surrounded.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I'm looking at this and I'm going, dude, where are your instincts at? And I go, oh, you clearly aren't as traumatized as me. And go, no! You know, for me, I would have immediately boxed your queen, your Zerglings, everything, and I would have clicked them right in that mineral line. Or onto the ramp, one or the other. I would have been like, get to the choke point, right? And the idea would be if I can get that queen wedged in the minerals, and then even if I'm massively outnumbered with my Zerglings, I might even use those mineral patches with the Zerglings, right? So if I pull my Lings behind the mineral patch, they can only attack through the choke with 1 or 2 Zerglings at a time. So I'll often do that, even with just a few Zerglings, 6 Zerglings. I'll set up like a little concave behind the minerals. And yeah, they could bring their Banelings through, but I can buy 5-10 seconds there. I can always run away when that Baneling comes through. And often your opponent's Zerglings will just kind of headbutt through that choke point and derp on each other. Whereas, look at this. He gets a surround. And then what are we doing? And then our other Zerglings are just A-moving. We should be pulling back into that mineral line. Because look, you're giving him maximum surface area here, right? So your instincts of pulling into you need to pull into your burrow, and when that python tries to come in, you need to fucking kick it in the head like a rabbit or a honey badger, or I don't know what lives in a burrow, but I'm sure there's some sort of burrow creature that like pulls back in and uses its defensive burrow well. That's essentially what we need to do in CVZ skirmishes. And those drones are so powerful if you use them with that as well. The number of times you like get that queen in there, and then the drones surround all the Lings. And because all the Lings are targeting your queen, the drones aren't even taking hits. And they do so much damage if you can get that surround and that surface area with the drones. So always pull back to the mineral lines and the ramps and just like think about those as almost these areas that constantly have a spotlight on them in this scenario. You're looking to pull your units back to those areas and buy time.
I mean, makes a lot of sense. It's just I have no... Like you said, I have no instincts because I haven't played ZVZ for like a long time. So,
do you watch any fighting or like other sports or anything like that, or do you watch much pro StarCraft? Like, have you watched like Bly play or anything like this?
I watch a lot of pros, but usually when it's ZVZ, I don't care as much, to be honest.
I guess the way I would describe the right attitude for Zerg vs Zerg is you want to be that guy who just like maybe you're watching a video on YouTube and one guy in a car park picks up a brick and hits another guy and you go, oh god, I'm accidentally watching someone get murdered. This is fucked up. But then the guy who got hit by the brick smiles and takes the brick off the other guy and hits him back with it. And you go, what the fuck am I watching? You want to be that guy who gets hit by the brick and smiles. That's like the right Zerg vs Zerg mentality, is like you want to just be comfortable in the chaos and just roll with the punches, right? And it's like just keep fighting and embrace things going bad. So that's why I love this whole type of Zerg vs. People like really hate Zerg vs Zerg, right? You have in the past as well. But it's such a good exercise for forcing you to embrace being out of your comfort zone, because that's like what a lot of Zerg vs Zerg is. And part of it is, hey, I'm like, all in your opponent, make the game go scrappy. That's going to mess up their game plan, but it's also going to force you into these scrappy scenarios. But I mean, even more so, it's a bit harder to learn, but there's sort of like just little defensive habits, you know, how to cover up and stop that brick crushing your brain. It's a good little skill. So it's just, you know, queens hold position, you know, shift H, moving to ramps, always pull back. And that's like a fundamental thing of all matchups, right? Big charge lot counters coming in, attacks coming in. You always pull back up your ramp or something, right? I need the next round of roaches to come out. We got to limit surface area. We got to pull back. Always pull back. To mineral lines, ramps, chokes, right? Always pull behind hatcheries. Pull behind hatchery and drones. I mean, obviously, if they've got banelings, maybe not. But like, if they're pushing in with like a big couple of Zerglings, your drones are actually a really nice line of defense that can mesh with your army. Morph banelings on high ground / behind / in mineral lines, right? Don't do that. Oh, I'm gonna morph 2 banelings out front your base in front of your attack that's right there, right? It's like the classic thing, and I know you're above this level, but I coach heaps of people, gold, plat, and it's like, oh, there's an attack at my base, and they like grab their drones and they start building spine crawlers like on their opponent's army, and I'm like, okay, like what do you think this is ever going to do? Like, I'm like, they're right there. Like if you're gonna build them up in your main base or like behind your mineral line or something. They're like, no, I'm gonna build my spines on your army, and I'm like, what? What do we? They're right there. Like you gotta have some understanding of how long it takes a spine crawler to build, right? But to the lesser extent, I see pros lose championships in Zerg vs Zerg because they just panic morph their Banes out front their base. The guy runs in and just shift clicks them down, and I'm like, no, don't do that, no, like, right? So there's like it's the same sort of thing, just to a lesser extent. But yeah, man, I think are there any questions popping in mind? We've got to finish up because we've gone a little over here. But
Right.
anything that I haven't or to do with ZVZ, anything in your head right now that hasn't been answered?
I mean, I think we're good. I learned so much this session. I think we can continue next time. I'm sure I'll have like more questions as they pop up, like when I play games and try these new skills.
Heck yeah, man. Cool. Hopefully you get cheesed a lot on the ladder. Fingers crossed. Definitely, if you get any practice partners or you get someone cheesing you on the ladder, tell them how large their micro is, compliment them, make them feel good, and then see if they'll play customs with you. Because, nothing better than getting someone to just cheese you 10 games in a row, because it's such a short repetition, the game, but you get so much micro practice and practicing that unique scenario. So anytime you can get reps on that, mad value practice. So I always say cheeses, we might hate them sometimes, but they should be your best friend. You've got to befriend your enemy to get those pracs in, those practice reps. And yeah, good luck with it. Even in other games, like I said, back and forth Ling Bane game, it's that same habit I was talking about, right? Where I was like, oh, if they're Ling Bane flooding you, don't morph 10 Banelings and just sit your whole army at home. Morph 2 Banes, put them on a different control group, put your queens on your ramp, and send everything else across the map. You're like, nope, I'm gonna take the fight to you, because we know that defending with Ling Bane versus Ling Bane is much harder than attacking. So instead, we'll give up ground, simplify our defense by saying, hey, 2 queens on hold position plus Banelings behind them. That's never going to go down. And sure, they could click our hatchery. That's a 1500 hit point, 1 armor beefy boy that's going to buy us many seconds, while I'm going to be going across and going for his drones. But it's the same technique of quickly pull queens to the ramp, put them on hold position, morph Banelings behind. It's the same thing that basically we're doing against a 12 pool, right? Get the queens to safety, pull them back, limit the surface area. And that's something we just repeat time and again in Zerg vs Zerg. So that, every type of game, you're slowly building muscle memory on that. And now that you're aware of it, every replay where you die to some crazy shit, you go, wait a second, should I just take in a breath and move my queens around a little better? Pulled back and disengage, pulled back to a tighter area rather than just letting him surround me in the open and use his numbers. Oh, yeah. So hopefully your eyes are a bit more open to that, and it kind of gives you a little bit more understanding of how you can do that better. Awesome, dude. Reinventing your Zerg vs Zerg. It's going to be a process, but good luck. Have fun with it, my dude. And with the Hydraling Bane, yeah, you were pretty accurate with the compositional stuff. The only thing is, like, yeah, if they've only got Marines, you could make a lot more Banelings, right? If it's just Marines or Marines Marauders, nothing else, you could go really heavy on Banelings technically. But if they spread out really well, you're going to take a bad fight always. So it's, it's not particularly reliable. It's more of like this guy has 50 Banes. All right, I'm going to make a shit ton of Marines. I'm going to make a shit ton of Banes just to survive right now. But it's mostly Zergling Baneling, right? Especially the more like siege tanks and stuff they have, the more Lings, and you never really go past maximum 15 Hydras, at most 20. And a lot of people stop 10, 11, 12 Hydras in total in Zerg vs Terran, because they're just a support unit. And because you're going melee carapace, you're not actually getting range upgrades for them for a long time. So, yeah. But you were pretty on point with it already. All right, mate. I got a jet, but shoot me any questions that don't make sense from the document. The notes are all up. And yeah, I'll catch you next time, mate. Catch you later, mate.